Uh, well, I don't disagree with the YouTuber that I'm showing you. In fact, honestly, to support her claim, I just kind of scroll down in the comments section and to say, where somebody made a really awesome point, which was just, the last time someone else tried finishing George's story, we got season 8, which is a fair point. But, I saw this video, and like, like her, I usually don't like to weigh in on things like this. Oh god. Where is my sound? How did that happen? Okay.
Comment on topical things or change trends or be relevant in any way. I'm super late to this, so is this even topical? But if you didn't hear, people are once again angry that George R.R. Martin has not finished A Song of Ice and Fire. And they have once again suggested that someone else do it. And this time they had the audacity to say that to his face and to suggest that Brando Sando do it. The obvious choice, I think we can all agree. This topic unfortunately comes up a lot. So this video isn't really so much about that specifically, because what I just told you, that's it. That's what happened. But this topic comes up kind of a lot, kind of over and over again. It has a habit of coming up over and over again.
He is so never going to finish it. Like, it's not gonna happen. I've given up hope. He's never gonna do it. It's just not gonna happen.
I mainly want to make this video just so that the next time this happens, I can point to this video and be like, oh, you want to know my position on that? Yeah, go check out the video that I made in the summer of 2025. Is it even summer? Bath & Body Works already smells like grandma's spice cabinet got knocked over. Anyway, let's get into it.
Well, it is now formally fall, as far as I'm concerned.
In order to make a counter-argument, you have to understand the argument. And this is where I kind of stumble on this at the very beginning. Great start. Because I cannot understand where anybody ever got the idea that they are owed anything by anyone that isn't their parent or somebody that they have entered into a contractual relationship with. Explain to me the argument.
I agree. I want to preface all this by saying part of the experience in the raw sense, though, is making me less and less willing as I get older to go through this experience in the first place. But I've already seen the video, so let's just let her keep going.
The thought process behind I read, watched, listened, consumed a thing that is incomplete. I liked it. And therefore, the person or the people that are responsible for creating it, they are now required to complete it.
I just want to switch, gears to show you. Wrong book. Right book is in the Book Lovers. That's in the corner I started on, but that's largely to fire back against the dark romance community that it is possible to do somewhat healthy, relationships. It was a ChatGPT wreck. Because I had exacting, specifications for breaking into the literary world of romance. But what you see before you, is 86 in its second volume, and I'm over halfway through it, and I just switched to it, in part because, like I said, like I was trying to indicate, I have, it's possible someone will pick the anime back up at some point, but I'm not patient enough. I'm not gonna wait, multiple years for some studio to decide one of my favorite animes is worth animating. It's just not gonna happen. So I'm starting to read her light novels.
Or else they are evil, and then if they personally cannot meet that obligation, it is their responsibility to find someone who will. So here's a little hypothetical for you. A gal, let's call her Georgia. is making out with a guy. Let's call him Kyle. And he's into it. She's into it. They're into it. But then Georgia gets sleepy, and Georgia wants to go to bed. Kyle is not sleepy. Kyle wants to keep going. Kyle wants to finish this. Now, obviously, Georgia is an utter villain for not being willing to finish what she started. But if she is not going to finish this herself, which is really what she ought to do, well then at least she should have the decency to call up one of her gal pals, maybe Sandra or Joanne, give them a buzz and see if they can do it. Only Georgia hasn't called Sandra. Georgia hasn't called Joanne. She's gone to sleep. Like, that's a totally fine thing for her to do. Unbelievable. So what is Kyle to do but take matters into his own hands? Kyle is forced to do what Georgia won't do herself. Call Sandra, call Joanne himself.
At that point, I might suggest that porn is a much better approach to dealing with that problem. If you really need to rub one out in that context, and I don't like going there at all or saying that out loud or anything thought-wise, but it's just like, well, that is a a sensible solution to that problem. But no, I mean, I get your point, her point on that one. I mean, I agree. Like, it's I see where this analogy is going, and I see that you make a point. I can detect the sarcasm, of it latent in it. I'm not so blatantly autistic that I would take something like that literally and think, oh, she's serious. No, obviously she's, what she calls her a villain. She's being satirical and everything, and yeah. I mean, obviously that would be a little bit messed up on his part, or very messed up. It would. I would argue that if you're making out with somebody, that there is at least some, what of a debate over whether you are or aren't, a romantic couple at that point, and so if you do call somebody else to get them involved in it, wouldn't that kind of, even if not technically, be fair grounds to, feel cheated on by the other party in this? Like, that just, it's complicated. So yes, I mean, nobody owes you anything.
To see if they'll be so good as to finish where Georgia started. You see, it just sounds so much more reasonable in that context.
Well, he's not going to finish it.
Sometimes things don't go the way that you want. Sometimes forces beyond your control conspire
Indeed.
to orchestrate disappointments for you. Sometimes the TV show that you got really into gets canceled. Sometimes the book series that you really love doesn't get finished by the author. And yeah, that sucks. It's okay to feel disappointed about that. It's okay to wish it were otherwise. But part of growing up is learning that the world does not revolve around you and around what you want. Creative work requires, you guessed it, creativity. And creativity is something that typically cannot be summoned on demand. To say that a creative is lazy or uncommitted or rude for not finishing the album they started composing, the book they started writing, the video they started scripting, is to entirely misunderstand the creative process. Sure, if it were an absolute requirement that something be cobbled together to meet a deadline, words could be summoned, a product could be generated. Would it be good? Probably not. I guess Georgia could put out for Kyle if she was forced, but would anyone really enjoy that? If and when George is ready.
I don't think that even Kyle would necessarily enjoy that, to be honest with you, in that set of circumstances. Like, being the guy that has coerced somebody in that doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me.
He will finish and publish The Winds of Winter. And if that's next year, fantastic. If that's in 5 years, great. And if it's never, that's okay. It happens. It's not the end of the world. I mean, it is the end of the world of Ice and Fire, but
Honestly, that shows me having changed, though.
If you were mad before, I somehow feel like my little analogy allegory did not calm you down. If you're thinking of typing something...
Well, I'm not entirely sure that I would feel that there was an equivalence to that, analogy, but at the same time, I mean, I guess what I wanted to say is that you can get really upset at this situation and you can be pissed off, or you can just kind of cope with the reality. I mean, I'm obviously, personally, I'm not entirely thrilled by the experience and everything. I'm happy with how things have gone down in this department, but like she said, I mean, I know the world doesn't revolve around me, my desires, my wishes, or anything, and I know that George R. R. Martin, you know, well, for one thing, like she said, I mean, creativity can't just be summoned on demand, and that's just he may be suffering from writer's block. He may not know how to finish it at this point. It may be that he just doesn't. He's out of ideas for where to go from here. There's too many loose ends to tie up, and for all we know, too, HBO ended it the way that he intended it to end, and we we just we don't know. We don't know what happened, and why there's no finishing of it, and or that may have been his idea for how it should go down, and this series was just absolutely, like, season 8 was absolutely hated by everybody, and he had to promise us all that he wouldn't go that direction. But I'm not really sure that George R. R. Martin really knows where to take things from here. I mean, there's a lot of ways that he's kind of boxed in and boxed himself in on the route that he has to go down now if he wants to finish it. And the thing is, though, he still has like a lot of the magic in the series. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, with the glass candles and everything, and with Daenerys, potentially getting access to them and everything, that could totally shift where he takes the direction going forward. And also, we know certain things about the Maesters, for instance, and they're, they seem to be of the view that the way that magic has affected the world has not been for the better at all, and committed to trying to stamp it out. There's all kinds of things that are happening in the world that they're in these isolated pockets, and it does kind of remind us that we live in a very hyper connected world, where communication is pretty much instant across the entire planet. You're able to communicate with people on the other side of the world, provided that you have a common language with them, or you can speak in the same tongues as they communicate in. Oh God. Anyways, as long as you've got a common language between the two of you. Anyways, no, I mean, I don't disagree with her point, but I mean, let's just finish.
In my comments along the lines of, George would be nothing without his fans. He owes us. I invite you to reconsider. The thing that you are a fan of is the thing that he already created. When you purchased Game of Thrones, you were not entering into a contractual relationship where, if you invest your time into consuming this and find that you enjoy it, then George is responsible for making certain that you have a continuous, perpetual supply. He wrote a book. He sold that book to a publisher. The publisher sold that book to you, and that's the end of it. George's obligation, if one exists, it is to an agent, it is to an editor, it is to a publisher, not to you.
And this is part of what pisses me off about the situation. His publisher should tell him to finish the book. I mean, they're the ones that have written. It's not Martin's fault, It's not really his fault. It's the editors at his, that publish his books, on his behalf. They are the ones that have let this go on for too long. They could rein in George R. R. Martin if they wanted to. They haven't, and I think that makes them the problem.
The person who happened to enjoy the thing that he already did. Speaking as a minor creator on YouTube, sometimes I feel very inspired to create content, and sometimes I cannot fathom doing that. Were I ever to gain...
I personally, I share your desire to mostly remain in the shadows. I don't really like the spotlight.
So large a following that I could conceivably make this my full-time job. I would never choose to do that, personally, because
Me either.
I know that my ability to create, my ability to be creative, is not something that I can rely on steadily. It's not something I can rely on the way I can rely on my ability to wake up, get ready, get in the car, go to the office, and do emails and spreadsheets.
For me, it's not spreadsheets. I'm an e-com seller. I sell toys on eBay and Amazon, and, you know, I did it because I just didn't feel like I fit in on this particular corner of the internet or platform. You know, the thing about YouTube was that I felt that it was a lot of, you have to be funny if you really want to court an audience, and I mean, people laugh at me, but you know, but I'm not so much of a creative in that kind of way. I mean, I am creative, like stirring words together, write poetry, that sort of thing, but I just, that comedic creativity is not something I'm particularly great at. I can find jokes that are funny and retell them, but, you know, I'm mostly riffing off of other people's stuff.
And whatever, and go home. That I can do all day, every day, as long as I don't have the flu. If I suddenly had 10 million subscribers, I would keep my office job, because
yeah,
the muses are fickle, and I would not want my livelihood to depend on my ability to entertain. George.
Well, I've said this too about women's music. You know, I've been talking about it for a while, and I've said, you know, one of the reasons why women are at a disadvantage as musicians is this particular corner of the web. You know, YouTube in particular. I mean, if you know, in the old era, all you had to do was get on the radio, but in today's market, you know, there are so many different avenues for a musician to succeed on. You know, Spotify, YouTube, all these other, you know, all these avenues, and, you know, there are so many different ones to worry about. But what I will say ultimately is that if you want to succeed on YouTube, then producing a video every single day is going to be, you know, the algorithm is going to favor your content, whether or not you even attract comments. You know, as long as you're putting something out there constantly, you know, it's going to get pushed out to more and more people. You know, that's just one of the ways that you play the algorithm game. I mean, I have to talk about, you know, my understanding of the algorithm too, because it's something that I use a lot in my own comments, and I make fun of people all the time because they don't seem to understand it.
George is lucky to have attained the kind of success that enables him to support himself without having a traditional job. For many, that's the dream. But as enviable as that level of success is,
I think that may be what you're getting at, a lot of where the anger comes from, to be honest with you. It's like, you don't even have to work, you know, George, in the way that traditional people have to work. And here you are, you know, jacking off instead of actually finishing the books. But whatever.
I personally would not.
I am able to cope with disappointment.
Issues. To feel so creatively inspired and driven to build a world like that of A Song of Ice and Fire. And then to have that passion poisoned by people who feel entitled to have you entertain them, like petty kings demanding their court jester make them laugh, elsewise off with their heads, that would be devastating. If something I loved creating was tainted forever by being associated with that kind of disgusting behavior, it would break my heart, because I would no longer find any joy in it. Do you think that George is sitting around not writing because he just can't be arsed? And if only a fan were to say to him, "Hey George, don't you know, there's people waiting and hoping that you'll..."
No, honestly, I think he may be suffering from writer's block.
"I'll finish this." And that George would go, "By golly, is that a fact? Why did no one tell me? I better get cracking."
It's like trying to tell somebody that cigarettes have, you know, they're bad for you. Like, no shit, really? I thought there was vitamin C in them and shit, you know?
Or do you think that he does know, but he just doesn't know how much people really want this.
Well, yeah. Well, I've as much as said it, myself. I feel that the title, the crown for the best fantasy writer of all time, is his to take. If he wants to waltz in and grab it, all he needs to do is fucking finish the book series. And his original, well, not his original, but his, the one series that blew up and made him famous in this regard. He was, I guess, in the writers' room and with a lot of other side projects, but none of them took on the level of importance of this big one.
And then maybe if we just yell at him, maybe if we parade him through the streets, ringing a bell and chanting shame, shame.
Didn't that happen in the books with Cersei?
Shame. That'll suddenly get the creative juices flowing
Or the
again.
series?
If you are a fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, or of any creative endeavor, books, movies, television, music, you should reflect on how grateful you are that you got to experience what you did. And you can be hopeful that someday there may be more. Hope is great, but to expect more, to demand more, by what right? Grow up.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I can cope with it, but I find myself in a state where it's like this right here, this thread of thought is a lot of why I got into anime and why I feel safer in that manga, light novel world, because, the way that operates, usually if you watch an anime, they always try to end the season on a satisfying place to end it, and even if the story still has more to give, you're able to go back and look at the sources. I mean, 86 was an incredible anime. I could not recommend it enough. And here I'm stuck waiting for another studio or whatever to decide to greenlight another run of this absolutely under the radar and absolutely fantastic anime that just somehow slipped under most people's radars, but was incredible, and everything. I basically, I have found that I am not left rolling the dice to see if the person who wrote the series will finish it and end everything on a satisfactory note with Japanese content. I'm just not in that space. It's like if I don't like where the anime decided to end the plot, I can always go back to the sources and read the manga or whatever the light novel behind the whole thing is and catch up on it. And I'm finding that as I get older and older and older, there's less and less of a willingness with a lot of this Western content to really roll the dice anymore. It's I'll sign up to watch whatever or to commit to this project and watching it once it's completely finished, and I know from the fandom telling me that they decided to actually wrap the story up in a satisfactory fashion. I mean, I don't. That will make me inherently late to the party, always, but like I said, I mean, at the beginning, I don't particularly necessarily want the limelight. I don't want to be seen, and to have the spotlight on me for the most part. I just have comments and thoughts periodically about something, where it's an important topic and I want to weigh in on it. Like, the fact that the media is too consolidated and that we need to oppose these goddamn mergers that these media companies are trying to go through. It's not enough to boycott Disney. We need to go and put some pressure on the government to not allow further mergers of this kind that these companies are fighting for. I mean, like it's already, there's already too much power, media power, in too few hands at this point. And I weigh in, periodically on shit, but I don't necessarily want to be, have the cameras on me all the time. I find that there are a lot of advantages to being in the shadows for most of the time. and privacy is important to me. Anyways, that's my 2 cents about all this, and I am basically done for the day, and you know, have a nice morning, you too.